17 years. My name on the sign, my sweat in the walls, my faith in family. But one meeting changed everything, and I finally saw the truth about what partnership really meant to him. My name is Charlie Landon, and I co-founded Landon Company. Hardware almost 17 years ago. My signature is on the original lease, the first vendor contracts, and every loan we took out in those early days. The name on the building? Mine. Literally. And yet somehow, in every room that mattered, I was invisible. It did not start that way. Back when we were just two broke cousins with a busted Ford pickup and a dream, my cousin Nate came to me with this idea. He said we could open a small hardware shop in our town, sell tools and lumber, maybe fix up some busted furniture on the side. Landon Company was his idea. He thought it sounded old school, reliable. We shook hands over a beer in my garage, promised we would be equals. Builders. Partners. Family first, business second. I was 26 back then. I had just been laid off from the local steel plant. Nate was 30, full of fast talk and big ideas, but no real plan. I had some money saved, Nate did not. So I covered the initial costs, the rent, the permits, the first few pallets of inventory. Nate brought the charm. He was the people person, the one who could sell a hammer to a man with no arms. He joked, I carried. He pitched, I stacked shelves. Still, I believed in it. I believed in us. The first few years were lean. We slept in the office more than once. There were nights we fought over which bills to pay first, electric or suppliers. But we stuck it out. I took on side gigs fixing people's roofs just to keep us afloat. Nate would pat me on the back and say, one day, we'll both be sitting pretty. That one day did come. Business started picking up. We expanded into outdoor goods, got a decent following in the local DIY crowd, and even made enough to hire our first 2 employees. Somewhere along the way, Nate's stories about our humble beginnings turned into tales where he was the only founder and I was just help. Like I was some tag-along who happened to be there. I brushed it off. At first, he would forget to loop me into supplier meetings. He signed our first franchise deal without even running it by me, just dropped it on my desk after the ink was dry, saying, it was a good deal, trust me. And I did, because Nate was family, because I thought loyalty meant patience, because I believed that if I just kept showing up, kept proving my worth, he would eventually treat me like a partner again. But I was wrong, and it took me far too long to admit that. The day I finally saw the truth, the raw, ugly truth, started just like any other. Until I walked into the conference room and saw what he had done. And in that moment, I realized, this was never my company. Not really. Not in his eyes. It was a Tuesday morning, cold enough that the windows fogged up from our breath when we walked in. I remember that detail because I had wiped one clean with my sleeve, just trying to see out. The sun was barely rising, the light hazy and golden, and for a second, it looked like everything was glowing. Then I opened the conference room door and it all dimmed. They had a meeting going. Nate, our new marketing manager, 2 franchise reps, and a guy in a suit I did not recognize. Everyone looked up at once like I had crashed a party I was not invited to. Nate blinked. Charlie, we're in the middle of something. I stood there holding my coffee like an idiot. I work here, I said, kind of half joking. I helped build this place. No one laughed. Not even a chuckle. The guy in the suit said, oh, this is the Charlie? I thought you were just using the name. Like I was some legend on paper. Like I was already dead. I nodded slowly. No, I'm real. Unfortunately. Nate gave this fake laugh, stood up like he was trying to do damage control, and gently pushed me back toward the door. I'll fill you in later, all right? But he never did. That night, I stayed late to clean up. I checked the meeting notes. My name was not mentioned once. Not even a bullet point. The expansion deal they were planning? It was called the Landon Initiative. Nate was listed as founder and CEO. I was nowhere. Not even in the credits. I sat there in the dark, staring at the screen, reading the same line over and over. We want every store to feel like Nate Landon himself picked the nails and sanded the shelves. It was the kind of thing I used to do. Literally. I built the original checkout counters with my bare hands. I sanded the oak shelves until my fingers went raw. Nate? He had never picked up a damn sander in his life. But in their story, I was just some ghost in the background. I guess I always knew it deep down. I just never wanted to believe it. That he saw me as a worker, not a partner. A name he needed to sound legit. Nothing more. People say betrayal feels like a knife. But for me, It was more like a slow leak. You do not even notice at first. Just a little less air every day until you cannot breathe anymore. And as I sat there, reading about this empire I helped build, but was never truly part of, I finally saw the pattern for what it was. This was not the first time he had cut me out. It was just the first time he did not bother hiding it. A week after that meeting, Nate posted a photo on the company's social media. It was one of those staged Throwback Thursday posts. Him standing outside our first store, fresh paint still drying on the front windows, with a caption about how far we've come. I took that photo. I remembered the day clearly. He was holding a paint roller like a trophy, barely touched the damn walls. I did all the work, inside and out. My clothes were speckled in primer, and I had a cut on my thumb that would not stop bleeding. But I was not in the photo, not even in the reflection. Just Nate, grinning like a pioneer, claiming history that was built on my back. I stared at that post for a long time. Read through the comments. People congratulating him on his journey, calling him an inspiration, asking for advice on how to start from scratch. I should have felt proud, but I did not. I felt erased. The power imbalance had been growing for years, but I always explained it away. When Nate started signing checks without my input, I told myself it was just for convenience. When he hired his college buddy as head of strategy and told me after the fact, I swallowed it. When he replaced our old sign with a slick new one that just said Landon Co and Company, I convinced myself it was branding. Even when I noticed he had changed his email signature to founder and CEO, while mine still said operations manager, I let it go. Because every time I raised a concern, Nate would hit me with the same thing. Come on, man, we're family. Do you really care about titles? Or worse, you know you're the heart of this place. He made it sound like I was the one being petty, like asking for credit was selfish, like wanting a voice meant I had forgotten what mattered. So I let it slide, over and over, because I thought patience would earn respect, because I believed that loyalty meant waiting your turn, because I kept telling myself, one day he'll see. But that photo, that caption, that fake nostalgia for a story that cut me out completely, that was the first time it hit me like a punch to the chest. He did not forget me. He just decided I was easier to erase. And once someone learns they can do that without consequences, they keep doing it. The thing about being invisible is, eventually, you start acting like you are. That week, I buried myself in the store's day-to-day, took extra shifts at the flagship location, restocked shelves, helped customers pick out lumber, fixed the busted light above aisle 6. I told myself it was noble, ground-level work. But deep down, I knew the truth. I was hiding. One afternoon, I overheard our assistant manager chatting with a vendor. I was in the back room sorting deliveries when I heard the guy laugh and say, "Yeah, Nate's a genius. Started this whole thing by himself. Built it from the ground up." The assistant manager, good guy, been with us for 3 years, just nodded and said, "Yup, that's what I heard." I nearly dropped the box I was carrying. That was the moment I realized the lie had grown legs. It was not just some PR angle anymore. It had become the official story, and I had let it happen, by staying silent, by waiting my turn, by choosing peace over presence. Later that night, I went looking for the old partnership agreement, the one Nate and I signed in my garage all those years ago. It was buried in a filing cabinet under vendor receipts and tax records. I read it front to back, twice. My name was there, right under co-founder. Then I noticed the date on the signature line. It had been changed, barely noticeable, just off by a few months, but enough to cause doubt if someone ever looked close. Nate's signature looked crisp and clean. Mine was smudged, like it had been scanned and reprinted. I sat down hard. Suddenly, little things started flashing back. The time I lost access to our online banking. The moment he insisted we switch to a new accountant, his wife's cousin. The quarterly reports I stopped receiving. The fact that franchise royalties now came directly to his side of the operation. Piece by piece, I started to see it. Nate had not just pushed me aside. He had been rewriting the story in real time. And nobody noticed because I had let him. He was the golden boy, the charmer, the face of the business. I was just the guy in the back office with sawdust on my sleeves and splinters in my hands. The worst part? It was not even personal. He was not angry at me. He was not jealous. He just figured out that I would never fight back, and he built an empire on that assumption. I always thought loyalty made me strong. Turns out, it just made me easy to ignore. And as I sat there with that smudged contract in my lap, a new thought settled in my chest, quiet, sharp, and cold. If he could change the paperwork, what else had he changed? A few days later, I got a text from an old friend, Trevor, one of the first guys we ever hired. He left years ago to start his own shop a few towns over, but we stayed in touch now and then. His message was short. "Hey, didn't know you were stepping back. Congrats, man. Must feel weird." I stared at it for a minute, confused. Stepping back? I called him. "What are you talking about?" Trevor hesitated. "Oh, I just saw the local news piece. That interview Nate did. He said you were retiring early. Said you wanted to focus on personal passions." My stomach dropped. "I'm not retiring," I said flatly. Silence. "Charlie," Trevor said, voice low. "I thought you two were still partners." I hung up and pulled up the article he mentioned. There it was. Founder Nate Landon expands flagship brand, announces sole ownership. And right beneath the headline, a quote. "Charlie's stepping back after years of service. He'll always be part of the Landon legacy." I felt my face go hot. I reread the sentence 5 times, waiting for it to change. It didn't. I was being retired, publicly, without my knowledge. Like a washed-up mascot, they were quietly easing off the field. My hands were shaking when I stormed into the office the next morning. Nate was already there, sipping coffee and talking on the phone with someone he called partner. The word made me snap. When he hung up, I asked him straight up, "What the hell is this article?" He blinked, then smiled like I had caught him hiding a birthday surprise. "Oh, that? Yeah, I was going to tell you. It's just PR, man. You know how it is." "I never said I was stepping back," I said. He gave me that same patronizing shrug I had seen 100 times. "Come on, Charlie. You're barely involved anymore." That hit hard. I had been working late nights, fixing what his team missed, running inventory reports myself because the new system was always glitching, covering payroll when the expansion bled too much cash. I was not stepping back. I was being pushed. And then came the final blow. I demanded to see the current ownership filings, the ones he said were just paperwork. After some arguing, he pulled them up on the office desktop. My name? Gone. Completely. Replaced by Nathaniel Landon, sole proprietor. Somewhere along the line, when we restructured for the franchise model, Nate had rewritten the business under his name, and I had signed off on it, without reading close enough. Buried in a thick stack of papers labeled Franchise Distribution Authorization and Operational Restructuring was a clause, small font, technical language, that revoked my share in the main company and relegated me to a non-executive operational consultant. Which, in plain English, meant I had no power, no vote, no voice. I had not just lost my seat at the table. I had been written out of the story. That night, I could not sleep. I just lay there staring at the ceiling fan, listening to it click every time it made a full rotation. I kept hearing Nate's voice on repeat. "You're barely involved anymore." It was not just a lie. It was a strategy. By morning, I was done being quiet. I drove to the main store before opening hours, let myself in with my original key, one of the few things Nate had not taken from me. I made straight for the back office, past the polished new wall art and the glass case full of founder awards with only his name etched in gold. There was one filing cabinet nobody ever touched anymore. Most of the records had moved digital years ago, but I knew that old drawers still held paper copies of everything from our first 10 years, receipts, tax filings, and, more importantly, handwritten ledgers. I dug until I found the one I remembered, a beat-up blue notebook with frayed corners and my handwriting all over it. This was our original expense log, the one I kept when we were too broke for QuickBooks. I flipped through page after page, rent checks in my name, inventory runs paid with my credit card, labor hours logged in my notebook. Then I found something even more useful. Tucked in the back was a signed agreement from our 5th year in business. It was not formal, not notarized, but it was real. A single-page letter, dated and signed by both of us, stating, "In the event of a corporate restructure, Charlie Landon maintains an equal stake and voting rights. This will not change unless agreed to in writing by both parties." I stared at it, heart thudding. I never revoked that. I never agreed to give up my stake. Which meant what Nate did, how he folded me out of ownership, was not just shady. It might be illegal. I spent the rest of the day scanning every document I could find. Contracts, emails, even old receipts that showed I had been footing bills while he took meetings with investors and posed for magazine features. Piece by piece, I started to build a story. One that looked a lot different from the version Nate had been selling. I thought about lawyers. I thought about revenge. But more than anything, I thought about all the years I gave up believing I was part of something. I thought about every night I stayed late to fix things. Every time I told myself family mattered more than fairness. Every time I played the loyal soldier while Nate played king. And I thought if I let this go, I am just proving him right. He thinks I am too weak to fight. Maybe it is time to prove him wrong. I did not confront Nate right away. Not because I was afraid. No, that feeling was gone. Something colder had taken its place. Focus. I knew I had one shot to get this right. He had built a throne off my silence, but I was done being quiet. So I made calls. First, to Lisa, our old bookkeeper from years ago. She still lived 2 towns over. Retired now. Sweet woman, sharp as hell. I told her I had some questions about the franchise restructure paperwork from a few years back. She said she remembered that day clear as glass. Nate came in all rushed. Told me you were out sick and needed everything signed by end of day, she said. I asked if you'd reviewed it. He just smiled and said, Charlie trusts me. He was not wrong. Back then I did. But that trust had been used like a crowbar, slowly prying me out of the business. Next, I called my cousin Adam. Not Nate's brother, but another Landon. Black sheep of the family. Used to be a contract lawyer before he pissed off a few firms and went solo. Adam and I had not talked in years. Family drama had drawn lines. But when he heard what Nate had done, he said something I will never forget. This is why you do not let a man talk you into loyalty when he is holding the pen. He agreed to look into it for me. No promises, but he said the old signed agreement we had, plus the pattern of misrepresentation, might be enough to stir up trouble. At the very least, Nate could not claim ignorance. Not with the trail I had uncovered. Then I did something Nate would never expect. I showed up to the next quarterly investor meeting. Not as a guest, as a co-founder. When I walked into that conference room at the downtown Hilton, all the usual suspects were there. Suits, shiny shoes. Nate in a tailored blazer trying to act like this was his show. He was halfway through a PowerPoint about future growth plans when I stepped inside. The room fell quiet. Nate blinked. His mouth tightened. Charlie, he said, like he had just spotted a ghost in the back row. Do not stop on my account, I said. I just wanted to be here for the part where you take credit for everything I built. A few people laughed. Most looked confused. Then I pulled a small stack of folders from my messenger bag and dropped them on the conference table with a heavy thud. Inside each one, proof, receipts, emails, original contracts, and that one-page agreement Nate signed years ago, the one that proved I was still a 50% owner, whether he liked it or not. I did not raise my voice. I did not need to. I just said, you all deserve to know the full story before you invest another dime. And as Nate opened that folder, his face drained of color. Because for the first time in years, he was not the only Landon in the room with power. After the meeting, Nate cornered me in the hallway. His face was tight, pale under the fluorescent lights. Not angry, nervous. That was new. You blindsided me, he said through clenched teeth. That was low. I shrugged. You wrote me out of the company. That was lower. He tried to play it off. Said I misunderstood the restructure. That the documents were standard. That the vote had been unanimous. I let him talk. Then I pulled out my phone and hit play. It was a voice memo, Lisa's call from earlier in the week. I had recorded it, just in case. The part where she said, he told me Charlie was out sick. Said he'd already approved everything. Nate's face froze midward. He reached for the phone. I stepped back. You lied, Nate. You forged the truth out of convenience. And you counted on me being too loyal, or too tired, to stop you. He said nothing. Because what could he say? I left him standing there, seething in a custom suit he paid for with money we both earned, in a company I helped build but was never allowed to own. The fallout started fast. By the end of the week, one of our bigger investors, Garrison Supply Group, put a hold on their expansion funding. Said they wanted to reassess leadership stability. Another investor reached out directly to me, asked if I would consider rejoining in an executive capacity. That was a fancy way of saying, hey, maybe the wrong Landon left. Nate called me 3 times over the weekend. Left one voicemail. Said we needed to talk like family. I did not answer. Instead, I paid a visit to the attorney Adam had recommended, a guy named Powell. Quiet office, bookshelves stacked to the ceiling. A man who looked like he had not smiled since the Bush administration. But when I showed him the documents, he nodded slowly and said 7 words that lit a match in my chest. You have more power than he thinks. We filed a demand letter, a formal challenge to the restructuring based on the unrevoked clause in our signed agreement. That meant Nate had to respond, legally. Not with charm, not with spin. With documents. With proof. And here was the problem for him. He had none. He had always run things like a magician. Keep the flash up front while the trick happens in the back. But I had the ledger, the contracts, the people who remembered. And now I had something else, too. Momentum. At first, it was just murmurs. Some staff at the original store started asking why my name had disappeared from the plaques. One of the suppliers started sending quotes to me directly again, without being asked. An old client sent me a message on Facebook. Glad you're finally getting the credit, man. We all knew. For the first time in years, I felt seen. Not just by customers. By myself. Nate went quiet after the demand letter. Too quiet. No angry texts. No late-night emails. No smug messages pretending nothing was wrong. Just silence. And I knew that meant lawyers were circling. I spent those days preparing. Talking to Adam. Pulling records. Digging up emails I had long forgotten. Every receipt. Every invoice. Every favor I never asked for credit on. For years, I thought humility was enough. But now I saw it for what it was, a leash. And I had worn it proudly. Until now. Then, out of nowhere, Nate sent me a calendar invite. Internal review meeting, founders only. Founders. I almost laughed. Like saying the word would glue the broken trust back together. Still, I went. The meeting was in the original store's office. Small, worn out, barely big enough for 2 chairs and a desk. The room we had started in. The same one where we signed the lease, sketched out shelf layouts on napkins, ate cold takeout after 12-hour shifts. He was already inside when I walked in, wearing a cheap smile and expensive watch. I think we've both said things we regret, he started. I did not reply. He went on about family, about the legacy, about how we had different strengths and complementary visions. He said this whole mess was a misunderstanding. Offered me a title, Vice President of Legacy Strategy. No real power. Just something to honor my contributions. I stared at him for a long time. Then I stood up. Nate, I said, calm as stone. You are trying to sell me a cardboard crown and call it gold. His smile flickered. You used my name to get credibility. My labor to build trust. My silence to take control. And now that people are seeing through the fog, you want me to sit quietly while you spin it into a reunion tour. I dropped a flash drive on the desk. Inside is everything I have gathered. Emails, ledgers, audio clips. Enough to open a full-scale investigation if I wanted. Enough to force a buyout if I push hard enough. He did not move. I leaned in, voice steady. You picked the wrong man to turn into a placeholder. I am not your assistant. I am your co-founder. Whether you like it or not. The silence between us was heavier than any argument we had ever had. You always thought I would never burn this place down, I said. But you forgot. I built half of it with my own 2 hands. And then I walked out. The door closed behind me with a soft click. But it felt louder than any slam. Because this time, I was the one who left him in the dark. 2 weeks later, the papers arrived. An offer. Formal. Signed. Not from Nate directly, of course, through his legal team. It was a settlement, carefully worded to sound like a generous handshake. They wanted me out. Full exit, full buyout, full gag order. The number was good. Too good. A silent deal wrapped in money. Walk away. Take the check. Let Nate keep the story he spent years rewriting. They even offered to include my name in the history section of the new company website. Like some ghost they could nod to without ever acknowledging what they did. I stared at the envelope for hours. The younger version of me might have signed it. The version that believed peace was worth any cost. That family was more important than pride. That having your name on a sign meant something. Anything. But I was not that man anymore. Instead of signing, I sent back my own version. A counter. One that included 3 things. Full reinstatement of my 50% ownership stake. Public acknowledgement on all branding materials as co-founder. A formal resignation from Nate. That last part was not petty. It was necessary. Because the truth is, Nate was never the heart of this company. He was the pitchman, the flash. But without me, there were no shelves. No storefront. No name. I waited. 3 days passed. Then 4. Then 5. On the 6th day, I got a message. Not from a lawyer. From Nate. Just 2 lines. You win. It's yours. Do not destroy it. I never knew how much I owed you. There was no apology. No long speech. But I did not need one. I just needed him to stop pretending I was not there. A week later, I stepped into the same office, alone this time. No fanfare. No press release. Just me, dusting off the old and company part of the sign that had been removed years ago. I found the old wooden one in the storage closet. Cracked. Faded. But still intact. I hung it up myself. Customers noticed. So did staff. Some shook my hand. Others just nodded. One guy, a kid who used to sweep the floors after school, said, "Glad you're back." I smiled. I never left. They just stopped looking. Now, the sign reads, Landon and Company again. But it means something different now. Not just a name. Not just blood. Proof that sometimes family is just a contract written in guilt. And sometimes the only way to reclaim your worth is to tear up the story they wrote for you and start telling your own.